the word. Pastor Wade?
All right, let's roll. Thank you. And your beautiful red shoes. She will rock all kind of different unique things and accessorize and try new things. God wants to do a new thing this morning. The old is gone. The new has come. And prophetically, I want to share this with you. When he wants to pour out something new, he doesn't pour it into an old wineskin. When God wants to pour out something fresh and new and creative and innovative, you would have to reset the old way of thinking to receive it. You couldn't receive it with an old mindset or fixed one. So I'm asking you right now to be open and to be ready, to be receptive, to have a healthy expectation to receive fresh wine this morning. Some of you, I just took you back to like a charcuterie board. And the fresh wine that I'm talking about this morning comes from heaven. It will refresh and reset and recalibrate because he's constant. He's forever the same, almighty, great, and we know that if we focus in on him, no matter where we waver, how we stumble, how we get things out of sorts, because we can go up and down with our emotions. We can swing left and right like a seesaw or roller coaster. But how many of you guys are thankful that God is the same yesterday, today, forever, for eternal, because we can always go back to him and reset and to be steady and to know that he's concrete. And he's not going to go ahead and do something that seems, oh, that seems shaky. That doesn't seem like it's from you. God is doing something great and new, and he wants to pour out. I want you to receive a fresh word this morning as we reach to the final part of our miracle series. And I don't want this thing to end, and it doesn't have to. And that's what we're going to leave this morning with, that we run with resurrection power. Amen? We're in John chapter 11. Very iconic story. We're talking about Jesus and his friends. I'm glad he has friends. Like sometimes we get old, and then like our young, youthful friends start to fade away, and then the college friends stop hitting you up, and you just get older and older, and then your only friend is the one that you binge Netflix with. Jesus had friends. It's okay to have friends. Build with people. Jesus had a unique crew that he would roll with. Bible doesn't talk too much about some of his friends, and we're going to go deep into this story today to see how God pours out resurrection power starting in verse 1. Now, a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. The only clues that the Bible talks about for Lazarus is that he has two sisters. He would feel the chill of the storms that we felt the last couple of days, and the rain came down, and all of a sudden, when rain drops down, he gets a sniffle. So he was known to be sickly. He is known to be sickly. He has a sister named Martha. He has a sister named Mary, and he's a friend of Jesus. Those are the minor details and the context that I get from the Bible when I research the background for Lazarus. I don't know if that would be the qualifications to be Jesus' friend, but something about Lazarus was a kindred spirit to Jesus, so I want him to be my friend as well. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and his sister Martha. Mary, whose brother Lazarus now lay sick, was the same one, Mary, who poured perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair. We take it back to the story when they're sitting down in the living room and Mary busts out the Chanel number 5, cracks that thing open, uses it as disinfecting Clorox wipes on the toe jams of Jesus, which even toe jams from Jesus would be anointed and smell good. Here comes the perfume to clean. Not only with her hair, but with tears mixed in with the perfume, she starts to wipe and she starts to weep at the feet of Jesus. This is that Mary who had an intimate and close proximic relationship with the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, who came to this earth in flesh to empathize with you and I. So he could feel what you feel, go through what you go through. Jesus knows that feeling, but walked in our shoes. And the Bible really clears out and shares with us that he is God, yes, but came to be a man just like you and I to feel what we feel. So the sisters sent word to Jesus, Lord, the one you love is sick. When he heard this, Jesus said, this sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it. Now, Jesus loved Martha. Jesus loved Mary. Jesus loved Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was sick, immediately he ran and jumped in an Uber and got to his friends. He was so passionate about his friends, you would think if you're friends, if you're boys, and someone's like not calling to help you move because you got a truck and they want that truck access. They were talking about their brother, your friend, the one that you love is sick and about to die. Surely Jesus is going to jump on the almighty Uber and get there as fast as he can. But the Bible said he stayed. So when we start praying and asking for God, and we start whipping our genie in the bottle type prayer, rubbing the bottle the right way, asking him to move on our timetable, the way we want him to move. Don't get frustrated, because Jesus shows us sometimes he waits because we don't understand his time. We don't understand how he orchestrates in the intricate way that he does. So I know in our human way, in our human ability, in our mindsets, we start asking God, isn't this a good prayer? This is a prayer that you need to heal. How come you don't come through? And how come you don't break through? And I've been faithful in this. And how come you don't blank? I've been there. You've said those types of frustrating prayers as well. But then we find some insight on how Jesus operates and he works. And it should give us some peace to know that he is in control. He knows exactly what he's doing. He stayed. 2 more days. So you're like, 2 hours? 1 day? 2 more days. Then you got to figure out there was no Uber back then. So I say Uber, but there's no Uber. So they walked, and then the time frame of walking sometimes is a day or 2. And then he said to his disciples, let us go back to Judea. When I said that phrase, did it get you afraid? It shouldn't get you afraid. When he said the phrase to the disciples, they start to like jitter. They start to get like afraid. Because they knew in Judea, there were people with rocks. Now, when I say rocks, you might think of pebbles. So like think of Glocks, Glock 9s, AK-47s. There were people that were ready to kill them based on what they were doing. So in their minds, they were looking at imminent death. And he belts out, we're going to go to that place. We're going to go to that storm. We're going to go to that hellfire. If you ever want to experience God's resurrection power, nearby is going to be some hellfire. Nearby is going to be some circumstances. Nearby is going to be some hellish situations that you need to walk to in order for God to pour out his resurrection power. Who's ready to receive some today? I watched a preacher on video for 25 minutes get together with some college students on February 8th. He started to talk an amazing sermon from Romans chapter 11. They've been in a series in the book of Romans, and if you ever want to walk someone through a salvation and how to get from like lost to found, take them through the book of Romans. It's the Romans road to salvation, old school, like tool to help someone go from non-believer to believer. He's preaching a normal word to 20-somethings, 19-year-olds, Gen Zers. Start sharing just literally verse by verse, breaking down the passage. No extra stories, just going by verse, like a normal chapel service that you would see on a regular college campus. I went to a college Christian school on the mainland. I've been and experienced those types of chapels. They're neat. I get filled up to a measure. After the message is done, this is last week, after the message is complete, they bring up this amazing worship team with one keyboardist, a guitar that was out of tune, and someone playing a tambourine, I think. No smoke machines, no extra MPC, MPK, like you can plug in and make every type of synth sound to get the atmosphere ready for emotional tears. None of that. A guitar, some keys, and the voices of the saints. And they started to sing. And they started to worship. And the service should have been an hour. Now they're at 1 hour and 15. Oh my goodness. They're going over an hour. How could they do that? These legalistic don't know how to have church in an hour. I got to get to my pizza party. This is college. They eat twice. Dinner at 5, dinner at like 11:30 at night. That's why they're the freshman 15. I gained the freshman 40 when I was in college. An hour turned into 2 hours. 2 hours turned into 10 hours. Same service, people, now it grew because word started to spread that the peace and presence of God started to fill that place. This is in a small town in Kentucky, Asbury University. Raise your hand if you saw a little bit of a social media post or you've been living under a rock, so this is something new to you. Put your hands down. I'm enlightening you. For 24 hours, Mitchell, they were singing the greats like, how great is our God, and I love you, Lord, and I lift my voice to word. Why can't we sing those? Why can't we go there, Francis? Why can't we bring back and resurrect? You know why they were singing those songs? Because they did not plan with their 3-song PCO what was going to happen. They allowed the Holy Spirit to do what the Holy Spirit does. And he brought peace and reconciliation to a broken generation that is trying to plug into an AirPod and be programmed to whatever is in our iPhone to feel whatever feel they need to feel. And finally, they're experiencing something real. Finally, they're experiencing something authentic. And it took time to dwell in the presence of God. 24 hours turned into 2 days. Straight worship. Everyone's starting to hear about the move of God that's happening at Asbury University. People from our church were just so happened, it's always just so happened was in Tennessee. I don't know how close that is to Kentucky, but it seems like the South to me. Kentucky, Tennessee, they're all the same state. At Tennessee, Every Nation headquarters, where our youth leader from the main campus is ready to be coached on how to do campus ministry, their director says, we're jumping in a bus and we're going to Asbury. And the reports that came back from that experience, it's not a Benny Hinn kind of conference, and I'm not throwing shade on different crusades that bent on that type of miracle outpouring revival. It was an outpouring of God's peace and sovereign grace, where people like walked in and fell to their knees and just started to repent. Started to say, Lord, I just want to get rid of everything that is not of you and experience your fullness as much as I can on this side of eternity. But the stories of cancer being destroyed and demonic infestation of generational curses broken off people's lives because of the almighty presence of God. So I'm like, okay, I gotta know what's going on. So when I chime in, they're on day 3 or 4. I go live in a YouTube setting. I'm hearing a song that triggered me back to 30 years ago. And I apologize when I go ahead and say about the old school days of how God poured out, but there was a marking that happened when I was 17 years old, and I'm at a camp experience, and the presence of God hit in that place, and I don't know how to explain it, and I don't know how to articulate, because I'm only 17 years old, but I knew I was changed, and I knew I was transformed. So when I'm watching this live feed, I'm starting to tear. The presence of God is like flowing from the live feed right into my living room, and I start to remember about God's goodness, His faithfulness, His grace, how that we need to find a pocket in our lives to experience His peace. And we cannot get there in a 1-hour service. So I plan to keep us here for 24 hours. Just kidding. You know what? That spoke to me. The Lord said to wake up. I'm doing a new thing. When I say new, it's going to be new to you. For me, I've seen this before. Some of the, I've seen this before. And it's not to be afraid of, scared of. If people would dare to really posture themselves in humility and faith and knock persistently for that type of outpouring, it doesn't just happen at a place like Asbury University. It popped off on so many colleges across the country. And it spurred me to text a friend. I'm not going to say his name. Every time I say that, I always kind of get to that person's name. I'm not going to say his name. He's a well-influential person within our church as a whole. And I text him. I said, let's rent Momilani Elementary School. Let's take it back to the hill for 24 hours. I want you on the stage with a guitar, just you. And let's invite all of those that walked away, all of those that experienced and walked away. And we have them all in our Facebook, and we have them all on our Instagrams, and they're living their lives. Let's message them and get them back in the house and start strumming and start playing. And I'm really serious. I put it out to him. Let's do it, because we could. He texted me back. I saw that he texted me. I was like, oh, man. He's like, Lord spoke to him. And you know what he texted me? I got an emoji. It was a laughing face. I said, maybe, Lord, that's a sign. Maybe it's not now. But we've experienced a revival like this before, where His resurrection power provided peace. That's what's happening right now all over the country. And if you did not see it, I invite you to go ahead and do some research. I don't want you to miss a wave and a marking that is about to take place. So when the prophets came through Pearlside and said that, get your cisterns ready, containers ready, because I'm about to pour out that you can't even contain, this word was not just for Hawaii, specifically to Pearlside. This word came through all throughout the country, because He's waiting for the people of this country to wake up. We got one more chance. We get one more chance. We have pushed Him so far out of our school systems. We have pushed Him out of our culture. We as a body of Christ get one more chance to do something. I don't want you to miss out on this wave that is coming. You were born in this era for this very moment and reason. Jesus called you, point number 1. And where He called you to, He will bring you through. He set out that fearful phrase, let us go back to Judea. Their minds didn't see resurrection power and healing Lazarus from the dead. Their minds went straight to Glock 9s and AK-47s, stones, that they were going to experience a martyr's death. But Rabbi, verse 8, they said, a short while ago the Jews there tried to stone you, and yet you are going back? How could you go back to a place where you know that you're going to be physically harmed? What God has called you to, He will bring you through. And so the reason they got paralyzed is they started to play the narrative in the movie of the mind. The movie of the mind that did not exist in the presence was all of the things that were going to be destruction. All of the things that were going to be a deficit. All the things that were going to destroy them in the natural were playing out in their minds. And so if we start dwelling there, we are going to start drawing from that well. Where we dwell is where we draw from that well. You know, I know this to be true. I drive on the H1, H2 in the afternoon. I skip breakfast. I skip lunch. And I just start seeing pepperonis everywhere, cheese, pepperonis. Driving. And I start conjuring up and start seeing a hot box of Papa John's pizza. As I'm literally trying to focus, and I'm seeing me opening up the box, the garlic butter sauce is in the left corner, pepperoni right here, staring at just like at these corners, and my nice cheap $8.99 one topping pepperoni. You gotta buy the wings at the side too, but that's online purchases. But I start to think about it. I literally start to smell it and I taste the bite, and then I wonder why at that night. And I just, like, for confirmation, hey, Reese, because I don't want to tell Ray. She's not going to bear witness to my prophetic word that I got from heaven. Reese, just Papa John's tonight? I was just thinking about pizza, Dad. Because you think about pizza every day. So then I'm sitting at my table, and we're eating the things that I thought about because I was dwelling on pizza. So we wonder why what we're living out in our lives comes from a well where we dwelled. We thought about it. We conjured it. We depicted, good or bad. Where we dwell, that's where we're going to draw from. And they were dwelling in a place of destruction. He was dwelling from a place of resurrection power. He said, I don't see stones. I don't see guns. I don't see danger. I see my friend who was dead, and he is going to come back to life, and I'm going to show all of you disciples, this is how I want you to operate out of resurrection power, because resurrection power and fire is always close to hellfire. It's always close to a place called danger. Some of you are like, well, I disagree, because I just stand on the word. Yes. But there is a measure of faith. There is a measure of a level that God wants to take you through that requires resurrection power. Ask the disciples that tried to release demons, and they couldn't. And Jesus went back to them and said, this requires greater faith. This requires greater prayer. This requires a deeper level. And he was trying to show them, you're at this level here where you're all about your flesh, but I'm trying to get you to operate in resurrection power. Let's go back to Judea. Let's go back to the place where I called you to. I will bring you through. So they go. 2 days turn into 3 days, turn into almost 4 days. Lazarus is now not sick. He's dead and gone. Gone. He's dead. And I get to the next point in the next verse, which is the shortest verse in the Bible, but does not lack impact. It does not lack power. There's so much depth in these 2 words. Let me articulate it to you. Verse 35. As he approached, we see wave number 1. The Bible says he loved Martha. Don't get it twisted. Yes, she was a busybody, but he loved Martha. Brother, sisterly love. She approaches him. Says, Jesus, if you were here, my brother would not have ended up in death. He looks her straight into the eye and would have to hold back his tears. I know this to be true because we're about to get to the shortest verse, but one of the most impactful verses. He's holding back his tears and trying to look her in the eye, like how I do sometimes, just trying to preach the word, trying to hold it together and not let tears fall. And sometimes I let it slip. And it gets on YouTube, and I start, why can't you just hold it together for a few? Looking her in the face, I love you so much. Your brother's not going to end up in death. In fact, this is going to be used to give God glory. That was wave number one. Then the family member, Jesus is here, Jesus is here, Jesus is here. Mary and all of their family members, cousins, start approaching. And he senses and sees the agony on their faces, the agony that is coming from their hearts, and he's moved with compassion. And wave number two, and the various waves of family members that are coming at him, he looks at now Mary in the eye. The same Mary that broke the Chanel number 5 and used her hair as a towel, used her tears to cleanse the feet, starts to scrub and starts to clean and starts to go. This is the same Mary who waited at the feet of Jesus, said, I don't care what you have to say. I just want to be in your presence. I just want to experience your peace. I just want to know your power. I don't need you to talk to me. I just want to feel and sense who you are. I want to be at your feet. This is that same Mary now belting out the question, if you were only here, my brother wouldn't have died. And then we get to verse 35. Jesus wept. I know it's sunny, but those showers that we had, when I see wept, I'm seeing waterfalls coming from his eyes. Hanabadas galore coming from his nose. He is moved because of the pain that he experienced in front of him. So if you don't think that Jesus understands your pain or understands what you walk through, understand what you go through, Jesus walked in our shoes to experience what we experience. Every other religion, the God or whatever Lord it is, gets to be here, and we get to deal with all of our thing by ourselves. And we're got to worship this entity. Jesus doesn't stay there. He's humble, and he came like a servant to walk in our shoes. And he did it before you even knew him. Because he wasn't weeping for just that generation. He was weeping for every generation that was going to come, that was going to be dead in God, walking like zombies. This thing that's happening at Asbury University is Jesus' cry out for a generation that is so plugged into everything else, so plugged in to whatever is coming on their feed, whatever is coming as the next thing that sounds great. I'm going to latch on to that because culture says this. I'm going to latch on to this because this feels good in my moment right now. Jesus is trying to pour out resurrection power and reconcile this generation back on to him. He's weeping for this generation. We get one more shot. We get one more chance. I love our youth team that has planned and plotted out what they're going to do tonight at Shave Ice and Ice Cream and Creamery in Kapolei. I probably butchered that name, but we're going to gather young people all over the West Side and beyond and watch God do something. Watch God move through this generation. We have an assignment, friends, that is beyond Joash and Inda. We have an assignment to reach every young person that doesn't have Christ in their lives. And if we don't bring that news and that message, some other pseudo-religion, some other mantra is going to be plotted in their mind, and that's where they're going to dwell. And that's where they're going to draw from. And that's what they're going to live out. And if you're content and okay with that, you got to go before the Lord. But we have one shot to bring this message clear to the next generation. We get one shot to go ahead and go out. They're ripe. They're hungry. They're ready. They're looking for people to go. Jesus weeps for this generation. Jesus is calling you out from the old into the new, and I want the worship team to come to help me solidify this point. When he had said this, Jesus called out in a loud voice. Now he's at the tomb. Now he removed the gravestone. And in a loud voice, he said, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out, his hands and his feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, take off the grave clothes and let him go. I made a mistake. Just stay right there. And then you stay right there. We'll part the Red Seas here. Because before we get into the worship side, I want to close this message with a powerful video of one of your very own. She is my literal spiritual mom in the faith. And the foundation and the formation of my walk with Christ is the many times I walked with this woman. And this woman at 40-some years old, when I was a teenager, was going through hell in her personal life. She was going through a divorce, and nobody knew. Yet she paused for entitled private school boys to congregate in her living room while hell was breaking through in our household. She opened up her home and shared the gospel and shared the word of God. I cannot tell you how many people have been impacted by those little huddles, but they operate in this church congregation. They lead churches all throughout the world. They are influential business owners that honor God and love God tremendously. And it really started in these little huddles in her living room. Amazing things happen when you dare to believe God for resurrection power, but then you actually walk it out and you invest in the next generation. So the clip I'm about to show you is from one of my spiritual mentors, Pastor Camille. Let's go to video first, and then I'll wrap up my last point.
It was one day at the hospital. I was downstairs in the emergency room, and we were discharging a patient. And at that time, we had a code 500 over the intercom throughout the hospital. And then I thought to myself, okay, somebody's going to code, which means the heart has stopped. Then I heard this voice say, it's not his time. This voice came from nowhere. Then I ran upstairs, and I went to the nurse, and I said, where is this guy? He goes, he coded, and he passed. And I said, just give me 5 minutes. And I really believe that he's not dead. So anyway, I went in, closed the curtain, and I've never met this man before. So I said, okay, Mr. Noni, I don't know you. You don't know me, but God said you're not dead. And I spoke to this body, and I started to say every scripture that I memorized to this person in Jesus' name. And I said to myself, okay, God, what else is this going to do? I'm praying this man through, and nothing's happening. So Anna comes, and she said, the family's outside. They need to come in and view the body. And I said, all right. And I went down to my room, and I started to just pray, because God, you said he's not dead. And I just walked back and forth, and I kept praying and pressing in and saying, God, you said he's not dead. I'm praying for him to come alive. This is past an hour already. And my boss comes in. She says, you need to go up to ICU. So I ran up to ICU. I went to Anna. I said, Anna, what happened? She goes, Camille, you're not going to believe this. He's not dead. And I looked at her, and I said, I told you so. I told you so. So I went to the curtain in his room, and I peered in, and he was sitting up with his family. And I cried, and I thanked God, and I just prayed in thanksgiving. I went on my knees. I remember crying. I said, thank you, God. Thank you, God. And what touched me the most was that I'm just an ordinary person working in a hospital. That God would choose somebody as ordinary as me to do something super ordinary. And I was so humbled by it. And I remember when I went to visit him, and I said, hi, Mr. Ononi. You don't know me, I don't know you. He says, yes, I know you. He said, you prayed for me while I was dead. And I said, I did. And that's how I got to know him. So he came to our church. The people at the Cooking Medical Center, some of them were saved because of this to this very day. Some of them are in our church. I'm just so thankful that he got to use me to do such a miraculous thing. And it took a lot of faith and a lot of prayer, but most of all, not to give up. Miracles happen to those who believe. So nothing's impossible. Nothing. Raising the dead is not impossible. Healing the sick is not impossible. Because if he can use me, he can use you.
Hey, that's the lady that would pick me up in her broke down blue Dodge Caravan. She experiences that moment, it was within 6 months, starts a youth huddle in her living room that grew from 2 people to at one time there was 40 kids. That was bleeding out her Palisades home. And we should have brought more food because we ate her out of house and hold. But we were fed the Word of God, the bread of life. And you think that if you meet her now, she's not an ordinary woman. She's extraordinary. But when she was operating, she was no pastor, no title, nothing. And she did an extraordinary thing because she was obedient to the prompting. Wasn't that crazy? Hey, go pray for the dead guy. He's dead. And then you start to rationalize, no, they're going to make fun of me. But she doesn't listen to that voice. She listens to the Word of God. And she prays. And she puts her hand on Mr. Naone, and he comes back to life. How many moments have we missed out? Well, we know God spoke to us. Hey, pray for that person. Pray for that person. And you know what we do, yeah? Oh, I'm going to pray at night in my thoughts. When Jesus, get out of yourself and pray for this person. Pray for them. Get in their space. Get in their face. Breathe on them. Take that risk. Because it's not you, it's resurrection power through you. And how many moments we missed from God flowing through this, and we're tucked in and just kind of thinking thoughts of prayer. And maybe that's how God moves. I've seen God move like this. So that's your challenge in this closing of the series, that you don't just take and receive for you. Let's be conduits and distributors of his resurrection power, but you cannot give what you don't have. And I want you to receive some of that today. Let's all stand up to our feet.